Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels pregame show. I'm Michael Kaminski. Just a reminder, this episode sponsored by Homage. Go get yourself a shirt. Scan that QR code in the top right corner after this episode's over. They got tons of merch available. All your favorite sports teams, any sport you want, you name it, they probably have it. Let's get right into it. We're going to have a guest joining us in a little bit, Tommy Erble. You can follow him, the Tom of Wrigley on Twitter. Going to be talking a little Cubs and NASCAR Street Race. Got my Tyler Reddick Jordan shirt on today to honor the occasion, but I want to talk a little White Sox baseball here first. So the big news of the week for the White Sox, which, not a whole lot of big news coming out there in White Sox time these days because they're terrible. Garrett Crochet, he's an all-star. Much deserved. Not really surprised the way he has pitched, the ongoing trade saga. We've discussed that enough, but let's just celebrate Garrett Crochet for a second because do you remember, go back to April, when they announced that he was going to be the opening day starter. After never starting a game before in the major league level, he hadn't pitched or been a starting pitcher since college. A lot of people were like, what are the White Sox doing? Garrett Crochet even said he was expecting to start the season in AAA Charlotte. Now he's been named an all-star. And not just that he's an all-star, he is legitimately one of the best pitchers in baseball. Phenomenal season for Garrett Crochet. He's the next Chris Sale. So I've really enjoyed watching him in a White Sox uniform this year and continue to get better. There was a little growing pains earlier in the year, but it's not easy what he just did, making that transition, but to be from a reliever to a starter after coming off surgery. So I'm excited to see him represent the White Sox amongst baseball best because he has earned it. Now, guy got kind of, you could argue, got snubbed. Now, I understand why the White Sox are not going to get two all-stars. Terrible team. There's not going to be two all-stars represented, but Eric Fetty had a legitimate case. Let's not forget about Eric Fetty. Let's give him some props too for his story, leaving baseball because he wasn't that effective as a starter. Had to go refine his game in the KBO. We've talked about this in the past. He's going to be starting today, first game of the doubleheader, 3.13 ERA, and he has an even higher WAR than Garrett Crochet, 4.0 WAR right now. It's one of the best WARs in baseball amongst pitchers. He has been excellent as well. Deserved all-star. I think the White Sox can get something good for him, especially if they package him with another player like a Tommy Pham or so. So that's a guy. Garrett Crochet, I would love to see extend. As much as I enjoy watching Fetty pitch, I think it makes a little bit more sense for them to trade him. He's not going to be really fitting in their contention window. He's under control till next year, but they probably won't be contending next year. So sell high on Fetty, but he's been awesome too. So shout out to him. Now, what I really wanted to get into here is Michael Kopech. The news around Michael Kopech is not just that he gave up a walk-off home run to Jake Berger on Sunday, which that sucked to see. As much as I love Jake Berger, this time the White Sox, that one kind of stung. And Jake, he was all class afterwards, saying we know Michael Kopech's tough pitcher. Wasn't easy facing him. So he was all complimentary, and that's why I love Jake Berger. He's a class act. So Mike Kopech, he has now hired the Boras Corporation to represent him. Scott Boras, notorious baseball agent. He has been behind some of the biggest contracts in baseball. He was the architect behind that Bryce Harper deal, represents Cody Bellinger, Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, just to name a few. There's a big contract. He's probably behind it. So why is this important for Kopech? Going to be heading into his second year of arbitration, and he's trying to maximize his value in a year that, on the surface, he has not been that good. And I see a lot of White Sox fans saying they're done with Kopech. They don't want to see him pitching anymore. They'd like to see him off the team. I'm not selling all my Michael Kopech stock just yet. And here's why. Now, look, the numbers haven't been great as a reliever. He was expected to be a starter this year. They're watching him in spring training. They kind of decided to make the move to the bullpen. And at the time, I think that was the best move for him because we saw him in 2021 when he was in the bullpen, and he posted some of his best numbers. He had his lowest walk rate of his career. Strikeout numbers were up. He was able to kind of just let it eat, throw that fastball hard. Was very effective. And he did get a little fatigue near the back half of the year that kind of raised those numbers. But the first half, he was virtually unhittable. So I thought, Kopech, letting him go back in the bullpen, what's his best weapon? His fastball. He doesn't have to kind of pull back the reins a little bit as a starter because you're trying to get deep into a game. I like the move. I thought it would be very beneficial for him. I thought he had the makings of a really good closer. Things haven't worked out. He's already blown 5 saves this year, but this is why I'm not selling my Kopech stock. And so here we got a little mini breakdown, courtesy Baseball Savant. I want to take a look at the numbers. A lot of red here. And the biggest one that stands out to me, if you look at the expected batting average against him. Now, his ERA hasn't been that good. I believe it's a 5.45 ERA last I checked on the season. So that's not great. And expected ERA is 4.27. So that's not that great either. But look at the expected batting average against him, 212. People are not hitting him that hard. Big reason why is because of that fastball. He's able to just kind of uncork it. He has one of the best fastballs in baseball. It's electric. And that's also led to a very high strikeout rate. Look at that K percentage, 90th percentile in baseball, nearly 30% strikeout rate, fastball velocity, one of the best in baseball. Opponent's not hitting him hard. So why is that ERA so high? The big thing is you look down here, it's that walk rate, 13.1. That's among the worst. While the strikeout rate's high, walk rate is low. And when you're in a high leverage situation, there is little room for giving free passes. And he has given up a lot of free passes this year. So got to cut down on the walks a little bit. And we're going to take a look, and this is kind of tough to see here, but I wanted to look at what he'd done in the past as a starter comparatively to being a reliever. And there's two trends that kind of popped out right away to me. Number one, last time he was reliever, 2021, look how high that strikeout rate was, 36.1. The highest it's been since this year, since he's been a reliever, where it's nearly 30%. So the strikeout numbers go up when he is in the bullpen. He also, if you notice in 2021, one of the reasons he was so effective, walk rate was lower. That was the lowest it's been outside. I'm not counting 2018 because he didn't really have a big enough sample size there. Walk rate, which is also not great. It's not very good as a reliever, but still good enough to get the job done there. But now it's kind of shot back up 13.1. When you're a reliever, you can't give up free passes. That's what we saw on Sunday against the Marlins. Leadoff walk ends up leading to that home run. But the strikeout numbers both been high when he's in the bullpen. Just got to cut down the walks. It's the two things. And that's why I'm not selling my stock on him completely yet, too, because you also look at the expected batting average last time he was reliever, 185. Look where it's down to now, 212 expecting batting average. Lowest it's been since the last time he was a reliever. So I think the big thing for him, if you give him an offseason, training as a reliever, working on that command a little bit, that is really going to help. Now, the final thing I want to show you with Kopech, because you look at the expected, look at batting average. Like they're not hitting the ball hard off of him. But one of the other big reasons is not just the walks. He's got to use his off-speed pitches a little bit more. And he even admitted that after giving up that walk-off to Jake Berger. It's because if he gets behind the count, they know they're sitting on a fastball for him because he's not incorporating enough off-speed pitches. The other thing with the fastball is, too, he's got to elevate it. When he's throwing it that hard, if you get it eye level, it's nearly impossible to hit. But this is a breakdown of all of the hits he has given up. And there's a common trend here. He's failed to elevate that fastball. If he leaves it in the zone and he gets behind the count and hitters are sitting on it, it's going to get hit. So I think there's some encouraging signs with Kopech this year in the bullpen. The numbers on the surface look really ugly. But I think with Scott Boras, I think the thinking is here, they're going to try and maximize what he can get in arbitration. But I do think if he comes back a year knowing he's going to be in the bullpen and kind of coming in with that mindset, hey, I'm going to be a reliever, because it's kind of a sudden change right before the season, I still do think he can be effective. I am not selling all of my stock on him yet. All right, joining us now, we got the Tom of Wrigley, Tommy Erble. You can follow him at Tom of Wrigley. He's also co-host of the Sports Mockery Cubs podcast we got here. Good content all around. How are we doing today, Tommy?
I'm good, man. How are you? It was good to finally meet you in person this weekend.
That's right. Chicago Street Race this weekend. It brings everyone together. White Sox fans, Cubs fans. You know, all I heard was bitching and complaining from the residents. It's an awesome event. You can't beat it. We're going to have a good breakdown for that. It's going to be longer. We're bringing back the NASCAR minute. It's going to be more of like a NASCAR, like 15 to 20 minutes. But
yeah, we're going to need some time.
I do want to get into the Cubs here first. They're in kind of an interesting predicament now. They're playing a little bit better as of late. 5-5 in the last 10, which doesn't sound much better, but when they were on that long slide, it's a slight improvement. How are you feeling about the Cubs right now with the trade deadline looming? Which way are you leaning for them to go? Because it's kind of a weird position there.
Yeah, I'm numb. I'm numb right now. At the beginning of the year, we were all on board with this being a better team, better than 2023. Obviously, the couple years before that, all of us hired Craig Counsell. We're like, hey, this is it. This is the move. This is going to put us over the top. A winnable division, a bunch of mediocre teams. And then it turns out we are one of the mediocre teams. So we're 10 games out of the Central to the Milwaukee Brewers. We're 4.5 back in the wild card. So you can make the argument that we're in the wild card race. Our record right now is the exact same point as it was at this point last year. So I don't super know. I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to depend on really, it's going to depend on the next 2 against the Orioles. Then we got 4 against the Cardinals, and then see what they do the couple games out of the All-Star break. But if it were me right now, there's not a lot that's worth selling because there's not a lot of value you're going to get back. It's not worth buying right now because what are you going to do? So we're stuck. And Jeff Passan wrote about this on Monday on ESPN. I blogged about it on Sports Mockery. That the Cubs are just stuck in the middle. We're just stuck in the middle. There's nothing we can really do. Hands are tied. So thank you, Jed Hoyer. Whatever. That's where I'm at.
I was talking about this with Aldo on the show a few weeks ago, but this Cubs season reminds me a lot of the 2022 White Sox. They came in with expectations. Expectations were like, hey, this is a weak division. We can win this division.
Yeah.
Kind of put in the minimal effort during the offseason. They made a couple moves just to say they made a couple moves. No, I think the Cubs are a little bit more active than the White Sox were in that 2022 offseason. But,
Sure.
They make a couple moves. And then the season starts and it's just kind of like hovering around 500 baseball. And like you're always like kind of in contention, but they're not playing like good enough to where you're like confident about it. And then it gets to this point. It's like trade deadline comes around. You don't know what you're going to do. And to me, that's almost more frustrating as a fan than where the White Sox were at, where I knew they were going to be bad. They are bad. So, I kind of accept it. Where you guys, you're still kind of watching every game like, hey, this is still important and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, and Twitter is just, it's madness right now because I've sent out a couple tweets in the last week or so that have gone kind of crazy with people. My latest being that if the Cubs selling Nico Horner at this point is what like low level, not top market teams do. And I was like, just be the freaking Chicago Cubs. And that set people off. It was like, well, Nico's not that good, blah, blah, blah. Nico is a Gold Glove second baseman. He is good, whether you like it or not. He's just having a bad year right now. And he should absolutely be here for the long run. Like, I know we have Matt Shaw, but why are we not talking about Christopher Morel, who's batting like 190 something? Like, why are we not talking about him? Like, and you can trade these guys if you want to, but you're not going to get a lot back for them. Cody Bellinger, that's a tradable contract. People would use it. Like the Phillies might, if they don't go after Luis Robert Jr., which, by the way, the Phillies, if there was ever a time to go all in, go get Luis Robert Jr. Like go and pay whatever you have to pay to get Luis Robert Jr. solidify the National League.
That outfield, if they were, I don't think they were going to have the pieces to do. I don't think they're willing to give up the pieces to get that deal done. I think Getz is going to be stingy. But if they did get Luis Robert, that outfield, this
is probably going to be the last year that they can go all in before they have to take a step back next year. So like. This is the time to make those kind of moves. But whatever. If they go get Cody Bellinger, God bless, whatever. Jameson Taillon has a movable contract as well. You see like the Red Sox, the Orioles, who we just beat up last week, those like they could use him. And then as far like after that, like Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki would have to waive their no trade clauses. Like there's no point in moving Nico. You're not going to get another Nico Horner back for him or a Nico Horner level at any position for him. And Christopher Morel sucks right now. So like, you're not going to get anything for him. You had a chance to get Tyler Glass now for him and you decided not to. So really, I think what the Cubs should do is just stand pat. Like this is the team, do whatever you want, like win, lose, whatever. Like this is the team. And then we'll just be stuck in the middle again next year because Jed Hoyer spent horribly. Like it's just gone so bad. And if they were to sell, this would be 3 out of 4 years Jed Hoyer has sold at the deadline. And last year he got Jamer Candelario. Like he was going to save the season. And it's just annoying. It's just so annoying. And I feel more stuck than I've ever felt.
One of the interesting stats I saw this week was Justin Steele, despite having I think it was a 3.20 ERA, he's been very good this year. Mm-hmm. Did not have a win until he took it upon himself to pitch a complete game. Yeah. But that's insane. And that's just an indictment on how bad the bullpen's been. I almost wonder though, if you're the Cubs, because they're only 4.5 out of that wild card spot. And I don't think they're as bad as that record. There's talent on that. On paper, that's the most talented team in that division. Yeah. It's just been a complete, wouldn't be opposed if they stood pat, but you add a couple bullpen arms, try and solidify that and just see what you can do. Because all you have to do is make the dance. We saw with the Diamondbacks.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's where I was like last year, I was like, all you have to do is make the dance. And then the Diamondbacks are the ones that made the dance. They made it all the way to World Series. So we're only 4.5 out of a wild card. But the other problem is because of this stretch in June and July, like that they've had, they played like 20 something games in a row against teams under 500 and they stunk and they didn't win. I think they won one of those series. So all of these teams that are ahead of them in the wild card have the tiebreaker against the Cubs. So it's like you're 4.5 back, but you're really like 6.5, 7 back because you have to beat up, like you have to be so ahead of these teams that have the tiebreaker over you. So it's like, you know, it's just, and one of the things that I was going to bring up about the stuff going on Twitter is somebody tried to make a point that like the White Sox season is way more disappointing than the Cubs season. Absolutely not. Everybody knew what the White Sox were going to be. They're not surprising anybody. They were always going to be sellers at the deadline. Like this was part of how the team was constructed.
I'm expecting them to lose every game. Like if they lose, I'm not disappointed. We're in 2022 when they were like 500, it hurt because I was locked into every game and they lose and it would suck. And you knew they were bad.
Exactly. With the Cubs, Jed Hoyer has been out here since November telling us 2024 is going to be a contention window opening. Where are we, dude? Like, what did you do wrong? And then the offseason, the bare minimum that they had to do was get Cody Bellinger back. That was the bare minimum. They did that, and they brought back the exact same team because Shota Imanaga is kind of like a left-handed Marcus Stroman in a way because Stroman had a great start to last year, right? And Michael Busch was great. I'm not complaining about Michael Busch. I was complaining about him earlier in the year. He seemed to have turned it around. He seems to have made the adjustments that he had to. And so that's nice. But this team is just, when you're like, okay, fine, season's over. They go and rattle off 2 in a row. And then you're like, oh my God, we're back. And then they lose 6 in a row. Like, I don't know what to do anymore.
Well, you know when it started going downhill is when they got rid of Garrett Cooper.
Yeah. Ask Fids about that. Yeah, exactly.
How much of this, because I think it's kind of interesting. You look at like the biggest moves that Jed has made getting off. I think the biggest one you could argue was probably signing Dansby Swanson as a GM. And that's kind of, if you look at how Xander Bogaerts has performed this year, even Carlos Correa, it almost kind of looks like they picked the wrong guy. And I don't want to like pick on Dansby, but he's been bad this year. And it's not just at the plate, what you knew, but like the glove hasn't looked as elite as it has in the past.
Yeah, the glove has struggled this year very uncharacteristically, but everybody's griping about him offensively too. And if you look at his numbers, he's giving you exactly what he's been giving you. I don't know what, like, Jed signed him to think that he was going to be better. He's giving you exactly what he does. So it's okay to be disappointed in him defensively, and you can be disappointed in him offensively, but you have to realize, like, this is Dansby Swanson. Like, he's streaky. He's a streaky guy. We talk about Ian Happ being a streaky guy. Dansby Swanson's an even streakier guy, and they can go super high, but it can go super low, and we're kind of seeing that now. So, yeah, that's the biggest contract that he's made. Shota Imanaga was a great signing. I still think this is a great signing. All-star in his first year. The trade for Michael Busch was incredible, but I'm working on a piece right now that's kind of reflecting on the trade of the big 3 years ago now with Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, and Chris Bryant, and seeing where those guys are and like what return we've gotten back for them. And it's not great because like, and I'm not saying that Chris Bryant and Javi Baez obviously have been disappointing. Anthony Rizzo, up until he had concussion problems last year, and then obviously he fractured his arm this year, he was sustainable, and he heats up in the summertime. So he had a slow start this year, but he was starting to heat up when he broke his arm. So it's just a mess. Like, what Theo gave to the Cubs was just magical. And he started off hot, and he was like, okay, let's take it slow for a second. And then really in 2014, he was like, okay, I need to hire some people to draft better than I can. And I need to make better decisions with my money and stuff. So, and then he won his World Series. So I don't know. Like, I don't trust Theo to do anything right now. And I don't trust Tom to give him the money to do it. I truly believe that Tom Ricketts has a floor and a ceiling that Jed Hoyer has to be in for spending, because there's still,
that's where that intelligent spending comment comes.
Yeah, they're top 10 in spending, but they suck at spending. But he's not spending more than Tom allows him to, and he's not spending less than what people can gripe about. So I truly believe there's a floor and a ceiling, and neither one of them super cares where that money goes, because they know 36,000 a night are going to be there. There's going to be thousands of beers sold. We're going to spend all the money because he's taking advantage of us being loyal Chicago Cubs fans. And like, I'm falling into the trap because I'm not going to stop going to Cubs games. Like, I'm not going to be the guy that walks away and then comes back when they're good. Like, I'm here. So it's just a sucky situation. And I know you guys have gripes with your owner too.
Well, that's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, because as bad as Jed has been, I brought this up too. Like, more people should be blaming Ricketts for a lot of this, because what motivation does he have to spend more? He's got his World Series, so he's happy.
Yeah, he's on record saying, "I already got you one." Yeah. So we know.
It's kind of almost like the old Jerry Reinsdorf thing, like where he would always like him to be around like third place, where they'd be competitive enough where people would show up and kind of hover around, but not like good enough where you'd have to spend. And I would never tell someone to not go to a baseball game because the team is bad. Like, the White Sox suck, and I've already been to like close to 10 this year. I've wasted my money on this team like way too much. But like, it's the summer. You're supposed to go to baseball games. Like, I'm not going to tell people not to go to Wrigley, but he knows, like, if 36,000 are going to show up regardless, what incentive do I have to spend more?
None. Yeah. It's a sucky situation to be in. And quite frankly, on both sides of town, we deserve better. We're the third largest market for sports, and we're all Bears fans. So like, why can't we just have at least one good baseball team at a time? I would love for there to be two good baseball teams.
It was so fun in 2019 where it kind of, like, that crosstown series was one of the biggest ones I remember, because it felt like both teams, like the Sox were up and coming, the Cubs were still good. Like, that series just hit different. And then all of a sudden, like, we just,
I was at the game for the Eloy home run when they won. What was it, 2-1? I think the final ended up being. And it felt like a passing of the torch.
I was really in the game the next day when Wilson hit the grand slam off of Giolito, and he did that like moonshot bat. Yeah, it was an exciting. I mean, it was a fun series. But Chicago baseball was funny. But outside Deech in the chat here. The Sox will not sign an outfielder of Robert's caliber at $20 million, but hey, let's trade him. That's actually exactly how I feel about Crochet too. The White Sox have already shown that, like, they even said, like, free agents do not want to come here. So why are we trading our two biggest assets? Like, that's why I would love to extend Crochet, because he wants an extension. Like, we're not going to get free agents, and we got two assets there. I agree with you on that. Final question I want to ask you about the Cubs before we transition to what everyone's really been waiting for.
Yes.
So do you feel any differently? And I admit, like, when it first was announced, I thought it was a great move. But now it kind of looks like they did David Ross dirty. Like, how do you feel about the Craig Counsell hire, and how would you evaluate? How much of this do you think's on him? How do you evaluate how he has done this year? And do you think they owe David Ross an apology?
That's a great question. I don't know about the David Ross stuff. Like, when we were going, I felt confident going into 2024, knowing that he was going to be the manager. When they said that, hey, we're going with Craig Counsell, like, how do you not get excited about that? And I never really had a huge problem with David Ross as a manager, because the manager can only manage who the general manager and president of baseball operations give him to manage. And look at what he had. Like, 2021, yes, the beginning of 2021 went bad, and there were some managerial situations that he put himself in that it didn't go well. But the narrative all year was always like, when are they going to trade him? When are they going to trade him? Like, nobody expected them to do anything. 2022, nobody expected anything. 2023, nobody expected anything. 2024 was going to be the real time that we got to evaluate David Ross as a manager. And the Cubs decided to go with Craig Counsell. You can't fault them for that. As for Craig Counsell, again, you can only manage who you are given to manage. And he was given a mediocre team. And I super wonder what he was told he was inheriting from Jed Hoyer and from Carter Hawkins and from Tom Ricketts. I want to know what he was told and how much control he was told that he was going to have, because I am almost positive none of that came to fruition. Because if you see these post-game interviews, he is frustrated. Like, he cares about winning, and he's not doing it. And meanwhile, the team that he left has just skyrocketed into power because they are a good organization. They are a healthy organization that knows how to take ball players, mature them into major league players, and then put them out on the field to win baseball games. The Chicago Cubs are really good at saying, hey, we got this guy in the farm system. We got this guy in the farm system. Where the hell is he? Where the hell is it? Because I'm watching Seiya Suzuki struggle at playing outfield and at the plate. Ian Happ, for a time before these last 3 weeks, like, hand up, I'll never say anything bad about Ian Happ again, because like, he's been out of his mind. But there was a time where he was struggling and they even sat him down. We have Owen Casey sitting down there. Kevin Alcantara is super ready and nobody's doing anything, although I think he's hurt right now. And like, we have all these guys that we keep saying, just wait, look at the farm system, look at the farm system. Yep. Do you think the Yankees and the Dodgers are telling their fans to look at the farm system? No, because they're the top market teams and they're going out and they're buying people to contend and win. And I'm sick of talking about the farm system. Be the freaking Chicago Cubs.
I totally agree. Been frustrating all around. It'd be interesting to see what they do. I bet it's a whole lot of, I'm probably going to be a whole lot of nothing is what I would guess. Now let's get into what we really wanted to talk about here. Chicago Street Race. It was the second year they brought it. And like, it's no secret, NASCAR is more of a Southern sport. And even growing up in Chicago, I got hooked on it because cars going fast. It's just cool. I don't care who you are. It's, cool. It's so much fun to watch. That's why Hot Wheels are in business. Every little kid loves playing with toy cars. It's awesome. And so to see it going through the streets of the greatest city in the world, and like, it doesn't get old. Like, even last year watching it, I thought it's one of the coolest things. I know some people were complaining about it, but I think it really is good for obviously the sport of NASCAR, but be the city of Chicago. I'd be curious to talk about your experience going to the race first before we dive into the specifics of it. I thought like the racing on this track is awesome. The background of it, like, is phenomenal. You're not going to get it anywhere else. And then they had like all these concerts, like Buddy Guy performed a concert there. Man's a legend. And they got him, like, he hardly performs concerts anymore outside of his like blues like center. I thought it was an awesome event. I guess, what were your initial impressions of it? Just walking through there.
Yeah, I mean, I was there last year and it was rain shortened both days. And even last year was like, this is just going into last year. My cousin Griffin and I, shout out Tandem Draft Podcast, hopefully coming back soon. We were very skeptical because we were like, Chicagoland is a perfect track for these new next gen cars. Why are they not using it? They announced that they're going to the streets. And I was like, these aren't really street cars. Like, what are we doing here? And then last year, going to the race and being there was like, this is so cool. And you're opening the door to market this sport that is historically Southern into a Northern market where people have no idea what it is. And they get to kind of put it on display for everybody. And I feel like they earned some fans last year doing that and brought them back this year to do more things. And this year was so much better because they had more concerts. Like Buddy Guy was there, which, by the way, is still horny AF. Good Lord. But like, they had more concerts, more people interaction. Saturday was a perfect like weather day. So we got all of practices and qualifyings, then the full Xfinity race, and the Xfinity race, which we'll get into the race, which it was just incredible. It was just incredible racing. I feel like the only people that are pissed about it are the people that didn't want it there and didn't bother paying attention to any of it. If you even watched it on TV or you were there experiencing it, no matter what your opinion was before that, after that, you were like, this is awesome. So I don't like, if you're just being a Debbie Downer if you didn't enjoy that.
And you know what I also really liked is because, like, on the flip side, well, we both love Chicago. You know, you live in the area. A lot of the NASCAR's diehard fans, not necessarily Chicago fans. When that race was first announced, I heard so many people on Twitter, oh my God, the drivers are going to get shot. It's such a horrible city. It's a dump. It's crime infested. You never heard nearly as much of that this year, especially because a lot of the drivers had rave reviews of the city. A lot of like the spot or people within the NASCAR industry, you know, just talking about how great the city of Chicago is. And I think you see a lot more people like curious, wanting to visit it. It's a perfect showcase for the city. And I think that won a lot of people over. And it was interesting. I saw ticket sales last year was like 80% new fans. This year they had pretty similar sales, only 60% new fans. So a lot of these people that went for the first time starting to come back.
Right.
And to your point, racing's phenomenal, which now we'll get into. Start with that Xfinity race on Saturday, which, by the way, if you've never been to a race, definitely check it out. Even if you watch it on TV. If you watch on TV, I don't know how you're not hooked, but
I think NASCAR puts full recap or full races on YouTube now, so you can go back and watch it. But just watch it. It's so much fun.
Especially if you're like a Formula One fan, where a lot of these like watch that NASCAR Xfinity race.
If you just like the city of Chicago, like it's just cool.
It was awesome. So Xfinity race on Saturday, and we had a lot of Cup guys coming down. But the best battle and the biggest storyline, 2 world-class drivers. Kyle Larson, a lot of people consider him one of the best drivers in the world. Dirt racing legend, ran the Indy 500 this year and did well. NASCAR champion. And then Shane Van Gisbergen, supercar champion, won the race last year. Just going head-to-head. Swapping the lead in that first stage, crossover moves. Larson said that he thought SVG was just toying with them. But I thought that battle alone worth the price of admission.
Yeah, it was... I mean, for NASCAR fans like you and me, like that was just a blessing getting to watch that. The Xfinity cars are just so much fun to watch on a weekly basis. I feel like that's the best racing that we get is in the Xfinity series, and watching Shane and Kyle just go at it back and forth. They're waving at each other saying like, hey, this is so much fun. And Shane talked about having probably a little too much fun racing him. And like, it was just so cool. And watching them do work on the field, like they had to make pit stops, and so they were further back. Shane was all the way back in like 25th or something like that, and just rocketed through the field. Kyle, same thing. He went through the field. I think I don't know if he finished second, but I think he finished like 4th, or he was in the top 5.
He finished 4th, yeah.
But Shane just like, he's just head and shoulders better than everybody when it comes to these street races. And he came in last year in the Cup Series, and just he took like 60% of the race to figure out how to drive the car, and then he was like, okay, and then he just went and won it. And he looked like he was going to do it again on Sunday, but he kind of wrecked. But yeah, watching them on Saturday was that was a joy. It was so much fun to watch them. The racing through the field was very clean and very good. And yeah, it just, this event in Chicago was just, it's a great place, and I'm glad they're doing it. And yeah, watching Shane do work on a road course is just something it'll never get old to me.
Well, especially you drive to Chicago and then you see these guys going down the same Columbus drive, ripping like 110 miles an hour. And the cool thing about Shane Van Gisbergen, so if you're not a NASCAR fan, you don't know. So he used to race, he's a New Zealander, used to race in Australia, supercars, which is kind of similar to the NASCAR Cup car. However, it's difficult. They drive on the opposite side of the road. So the first year he came over, he was driving on the opposite side of the road, shifting with his wrong hand, and he still came over and kicked all those corn-fed boys' ass. So that was really impressive. And then finally, because today there was no rain, or that race there was no rain, those cars were flying. Like you could see like how hard it was for like grip flying. And then Jesse Love, young kid, trying to hold him off at the end. I thought he did a really good job. And just Shane, he's just that much better, was able to make that pass. And a tight technical turn 4 section too, where you wouldn't think there'd be a whole lot of passing in that area.
And I ran it on the simulator too. I have one at home. I do the iRacing thing, and then I ran it at the track, or at the festivities. They had simulators all over the place, and I did run a 138, which is only 9 seconds off the pace. So I know that there may be an opening at AM Racing where Haley Deegan was, and I know Josh Berry's taking over this weekend. But if they need somebody, like, I just put me in the car. I'm ready to go.
That was the other funny thing, or the big storyline that came out of that race. Joey Logano fills in for Haley Deegan, who was the only female driver in the Xfinity series at the time. I always was rooting for. The results just haven't been there, so they wanted to evaluate the car. I thought it was hilarious though. Listening on the radio, they're talking to the crew chief, and he's like, it's like loose. Like we got to free it up a bit. And the crew chief's like, all right, like, what do you want us to do? And Joey had to tell him, he's like, well, you should probably take a little air out of the tires first. Like he literally had to make the adjustment. So it makes me think, maybe it was more than just Haley.
No, it's 1,000% deeper than Haley. Like she was not given the proper equipment to even have a chance to win. So it explains where her spot is in the standings. But there's so much marketability opportunity with her being the only woman driver right now. But also she's really good at what she does. So giving her the opportunities, she's going to get an opportunity somewhere. It may be back in trucks. I don't know. I hope it's not, because like they just ate her up. And trucks is just, that's just something. I feel like if she could get an opportunity at Xfinity, which we saw like last year, she ran in Vegas. She got a top 15 in Vegas and was incredible in her first time in an Xfinity car. So I hope she gets another opportunity.
Moving on to the Cup race on Sunday. Little White Sox connection here. We had a White Sox sponsored car. Michael McDowell was driving it. It was a really sharp looking car. Unlike last year, this felt like the first time like the White Sox have actually had a chance to win something important this year. Michael McDowell, excellent road course racer. It's funny. So
who drove the White Sox car last year?
Ty Dillon.
That's
didn't even finish the race, and much like the White Sox, finished last in the back of the pack. So it was actually a very fitting partnership if you think about it. Kind of second fiddle to his brother, Austin Dillon, much like the White Sox with the Cubs, back in the pack in the stand. So it was very fitting.
Austin very mediocre. So yeah, right on it.
This year we get Michael McDowell repping the White Sox car. It was interesting how that sponsorship came together too. So I got credentials for the race down in Gateway to cover for our station. And I was talking with Front Row Motorsports general manager Jerry Freese, and he was saying the reason that partnership came together, he's like, the White Sox, from what he understood, were looking for a sponsor. They had a sponsor for that Chicago race. It fell through last minute. So they're like, oh, White Sox are looking, let's come together for a partnership. And then the Front Row also had an opening for the All-Star game. So the White Sox are like, oh, hey, Charlotte Knights, like we'll throw them in too. So like, it's kind of funny. They got like a 2-for-1, right? Both organizations represented, but McDowell finished 5th. So probably the highest he also qualified 3rd, which is the highest the White Sox have ever been in the standings. Other Chicago connection, Michael Jordan. He co-owns a team. If you don't know, Tyler Reddick, the 45 car driving that. Awesome looking car with the Jumpman logo on the front. It's the one on the shirt there. You can kind of see it, but
oh, you got a shirt. I love it.
Oh, I had to with the Jordan brand NASCAR merch. Can't go
wrong. I love it.
Can't go wrong with that. But yeah, so I guess we'll going into the Cup race. Different strategy. Starts raining a little bit. Take me through what your thoughts were. I guess at first it starts coming down raining. You kind of had to do the wet weather tires, the slick tires. What'd you think about how that was all played out?
Yeah, it was chaos because like all morning and in the going into the afternoon, the weather was perfect. Like Keith Urban was playing.
Who put on a hell of a show, by the way.
Yeah, he did great. And walking around to all the different booths, like everybody was in such a good mood. This race didn't start until 3:30, and people were at the gates at 9 when they opened. Like it was so much fun walking around. I think the Liquid IV booth gave me like 37 Liquid IV pouches, which was great. And then I just walked around and just took advantage of all the free food and free stuff. So I got a couple of free T-shirts with like Chevy and Ford and stuff. So I'm very excited about that. But just leading up to the race, we're like, okay, it's gonna be Shane versus Kyle 2.0. Yep. Super excited about it. And then we go and we actually had our spot leading into kind of where the choose cone was, going into turn 6 right there. That's where our spot was. And there was a time where we saw there were chairs lined up, but then there was nobody behind the chairs. So we were like, okay, we can hear Keith Urban from here. Let's sit and reserve our spots for this race. So we did. We sat there for probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then, we saw the drivers come by, and then gentlemen, start your engines. And then they're about to roll off, and they're like, nope, they're not rolling off. And then we get a downpour. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you got to be kidding me. We're about to start the race, and they're doing this to us again because last year was just so terrible.
Such a buzzkill. Yep.
Yeah. But then my cousin and I were thinking about it. We were like, oh my gosh, like, we're gonna see rain tires. Like, this is gonna be great. And not only rain tires, it's not wet enough to where they can make people do rain tires. So part of the field went rain tires, part of the field didn't. We were actually standing next to one of Austin Cindric's spotters. He was at the choose cone for Austin Cindric. And so like he was telling us like what was going on. He was like, oh, we're doing rain tires. All Penske's doing rain tires. We're like, oh my gosh. So there were only like 4 or 5 cars that did rain tires. And that was a mistake because they went straight to the back and then the slicks went straight to the front. And it was chaos, but they were banking on, it was at like 60 to 70% rain chance right when the green flag dropped. So they were banking on these guys are going to have to come in on slicks. They never did have to come in. And then the stage caution hit, and then another caution hit, and then just the heavens opened up. And it was fun to watch the strategy though. I love these races where tire wear or fuel or something changes the course of the race, where some people are on one strategy and some people are on another, and even sometimes a third strategy. Those are the best races to watch, when everybody has to make a different decision. I felt like this was that. Shane wrecked early and he was out of the race. Kyle Larson finished second to last, which nobody had that. So it was tough that we had to do the rain thing again, but it was so much fun to watch the different strategies. And ultimately it was a strategy race because Alex Bowman was like, hey, we can't win if we come in and put slicks on. We might as well stick with what we got. And then he won the race. So it worked out.
That first stage was so entertaining to your point. When it was just drizzling, I thought it was very enjoyable because that course is very tough as it is.
Yeah.
It really challenges the drivers, which we saw on Saturday when it was dry conditions.
Yeah, different surfaces, different surface types. And then also you have puddling at different parts of the track, but then completely dry at other parts of the track. So it was perfect. It was so
And then
much
there
fun.
was times where like it would be raining. So like Michael McDowell went into pit because like he's like, all right, I got to get the wet weather tires. And then it stopped. And so now he's on the wets and he's like, well, man, now I lost all my track position. So that was an excellent first stage. Then it kind of comes down, pouring rain. They try and get it going again in the pouring rain. Chase Briscoe overcooks the corner, clips SVG. He wrecks. And I saw it was like that's only the second time in NASCAR history that Alex Bowman, who won the race, he finished last year because his engine blew up. SVG, who won the race last year, he finished last this year because of that. So I thought that was kind of funny as well. But it was interesting with Alex Bowman. It was a little bit of strategy near the end because they finished stage 2. Then they did the timer. So they got to do the countdown clock. They're like, hey, we're still on the wets. Just stay out on the wets. We're clearly faster than everyone. But like, even though it was like strategy, he was making hay. Like he had speed. I don't want to take anything away from Bowman. It wasn't just like, So, and everyone, unlike last year when they announced the race was going to be shortened, everyone knew it was going to be shortened this time. So everyone could plan accordingly. The guy I really thought it was interesting though, because you watch the end of that race and the guy who was getting bigger and bigger in his mirror was Tyler Reddick. Who ended up putting on the slick tires when that track started drying off and was flying.
One more lap. If it was one more lap, which they did, they said the 8:20 hard stop, but it was like 8:26 when they finally did the white flag.
Yeah.
And I bet you Bowman was just fuming in that car. It was like, call the red, because Reddick was coming, man. Like he was fast. He
went from 6 seconds down with 2 laps to go, cut it to under 2 seconds. And he hit the wall trying to chase him down. He's kind of right at the edge. And that's what did it for him on the last lap. But even like to your point, if he had another lap, he probably catches him. He doesn't hit the wall.
He had him,
It would have been really interesting to see how that played out.
Yeah. Yeah. But all in all, like just an incredible weekend. And on Friday, I got to participate in the NASCAR, the Foundation's golf tournament. My work was a sponsor. I got to play golf with Dale Jarrett, which was just stupid. And I got to talk to Dale and about kind of like the trajectory of the sport and kind of where we're going. And his son, actually played a huge part in having NASCAR try this for at least 3 years and see where they're going with it. And he said that like they're definitely doing it again next year because it's under contract. But beyond that, if it's not in Chicago, take a look at Quebec, take a look at LA, take a look at all these other different places where they've proven that they could street race, Vegas even. And these other markets that they don't super have NASCAR as like a big thing that could make it a big thing. So while the Chicago Street Race might be ending after next year, and it's not official because they could work out a deal to make it a thing still. But if it does end, look for it to happen in another city, maybe a city where some of you watching are, and get into it.
Yeah.
Accept it. Welcome it.
Cool. You don't even have to become like a fan after, but it's worth, if you've never been to a race, it's worth checking out, especially in Chicago. I do have some thoughts on that though. The first thing I found that was interesting was, and regardless of how you feel of how he's done as a mayor, but like Brandon Johnson, when he first took over, he was like, I don't know about this deal. Like we might want to reevaluate it. He was all in on it this year. He's walking up and down pit road with the fire suit. So it was nice to see the city embrace it because last year, a bit skeptical. Moving forward, though, I think it would be interesting. And I was rewatching the race this week on TV. I kind of thought, I was thinking about this. There's not a whole lot of other cities that could do what Chicago did. Because like New York, I don't think you can pull it off.
You can't.
LA, they already tested with the Clash. You're really not going to get the same amount of like fan base you're going to get. And it's so nice the way they had that set up and they were able to reduce. And I'm curious to those of you that are watching on Twitter that aren't NASCAR fans, live in the city, to chime in. how you thought the traffic impacted you. But I thought they did a good job minimizing the traffic impacts. It was also nice because the drivers could, like, the way they had Grant Park set up, most cities don't have that area where you can have that fan activity area, the concert area, all of the tracks like right in one spot. This could be, and as much as I want to go back to Chicagoland, this could be a crown jewel event moving forward. It could be NASCAR version
so cool
of Monaco, because you got Lake Michigan right there. It's like the discount Americanized version of Monaco. It's a world-class city. The food's phenomenal. The racing, unlike Monaco, is fantastic. And it's one of the few cities you could pull this off with the minimal invasion. Now, I will say for the residents of Chicago, I could understand where you might want to move it off of 4th of July weekend. That I would understand. But I would not be opposed. From a racing perspective, it's awesome. From a fan perspective, it's awesome. If they brought this back every year. I don't think they will. Yeah. But I think that could be a yearly event where it could turn into a crown jewel, because it felt different. The vibe felt, I've been to a lot of races this year. The vibe beforehand felt like a big event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did feel like a big event. And if they want to move it off of 4th of July weekend, that's fine with me, because I'm freaking tired of it raining on Sunday. So maybe a different weekend will work out. But yeah, it would be cool if it became a crown jewel event. Like you said, it would be cool if it came back every single year, even with Chicagoland, because again, we haven't seen it yet, but Chicagoland is perfect for these next gen cars. The way that they are constructed and the way that they run. Take a look at Kansas and the great racing that comes in Kansas. You would get that in Chicagoland. So I would love to see both of them. It would be cool if hey, we got 2 races in Chicago area. Like, that would be awesome for the sport. Yeah. But this street course, to be fair, talking about going to different cities and stuff, if they, when it was first coming to Chicago, we were like, there's no way this is going to work. So there could be a city out there where we're like, hey, there's no way it could work. And then it could work perfectly. So we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, the way Chicago is, like, it's flat, so you don't have to worry about too many hills. There's a couple of bridges that they use. But they're like you said, wide open racing, which you don't get at Monaco. And I would love to see maybe a different series take a crack at it, but kind of partner with NASCAR. And I'm not saying F1 is going to be like, yeah, let's do it, because I don't think this track is big enough for F1. I don't know a lot about it, but they would not have a big enough DRS zone, I don't think.
Which their setup and teardown, because they have much higher standards for their track, unlike NASCAR, would be brutal. Listen to some of the horror stories out of Vegas. You think NASCAR was a pain in the ass for you residents? If F1 rolled into town, that would be like a 4-month disruption, not just like a couple-week disruption.
Yeah, but a lot of casual racing fans, or even not racing fans in general, who were interested in NASCAR, there are a lot of racing series out there where this track would be really cool to watch some of these cars go at it. Indy cars would be fun. I don't know if it's big enough on the straightaways, but it would be very interesting to see how they would work. They're like the Miata series. Watching the Miatas go around on this track, like, that'd be so much fun. They do it at the Roval. Like, let's try it on the streets. It would be, there are just so many opportunities for this to be like a monumental weekend, or even a couple weeks. Like, I know that everybody's pissed about the traffic, but they do it in the summertime where a lot of people are on vacation, or there's not school. Like, Lollapalooza is arguably a bigger problem than the NASCAR was. You just don't like it because you're not used to NASCAR being a thing. So I don't know. Like, we'll see where the future holds. If it goes super well next year and they get big names like Keith Urban to like come back and do this again, they're going to have a hard time pitching it not happening again.
And that's the element that we like, we're talking about the racing because we're both NASCAR fans, which is awesome. But even if you're not a racing fan, the concerts they had were great. Like,
Chainsmokers looked incredible. However, your boy was in bed like 15 minutes after Chainsmokers started.
I'm not a big Chainsmoker fan. The pyrotechnics were great, and that was like a massive turnout. Like, the energy was really good. I didn't realize they played all the EDM music. They hardly played, like, I listened to them on the radio, and I was like listening. I was like, wow, I didn't realize they were like an EDM show. I was not a fan. I might be old. I was like, this sounds like a traffic jam.
I mean, the youngins looked like they had fun, but this 30-year-old was definitely in bed trying to prepare for the next day.
Yeah. But like, you get those big names, you have that music festival atmosphere on top of it. This could be a great event for the city. And I think it's good. Sure. They were saying it was really good. Like, the hotel sales, they got a lot of people buying hotels and whatnot. It's a good event for the economy. Too. I think Chicago could get a little bit of a better deal on it. When Lightfoot first signed that deal, NASCAR did kind of screw them on it. They should get more money out of the ticket. So if they do bring it back, I think Chicago could maybe do even get more money out of it too.
And I'm not going to be mad at anybody from screwing over Lori Lightfoot, because like, that's just easy to do. So why not do it? But yeah, I would love to see this event back. I would also love seeing racing back in Chicagoland. So really, as long as I get one of the two, I'm good.
That's
but
good.
The street course would be really good. And you know what? Quite frankly, there are so many likable drivers in NASCAR right now. You don't even have to have a super favorite driver. So if you're mad at your baseball teams like we are, watch a NASCAR race because it's
Who doesn't
enjoyable.
love Michael Jordan? He's got two drivers you can root for. They usually have awesome paint schemes. The Jordan brand paint schemes, because they have like a lot of them that model after the shoes, are phenomenal.
Yeah.
They get the White Sox car both years in a row. We got to get a Cubs car in there, but
the Ricketts is too stingy about that. But also shout out Brad Keselowski because he drove an Elk Grove Village car. So
there you go. So
2 years in a row.
The Illinois ties were real. Definitely, recommend check. It's supposed to come back next year. You've never been to a race, or you're curious. Highly recommend checking it out. You got any final thoughts just on White Sox Cubs street race? Any last thought?
Yeah, my real only final thought is I think going forward, I'm Team Mitch for forever. So everybody except for Mitch should be kicking rocks.
I like that. You hear that, Zoe? That's actually perfect segue. Tonight, this is the pregame show. So if you enjoyed this, you'll like the main show just as much. Zoe's in a golf tournament right now. For I think it's some sort of charity event, I want to say, but he's in a golf tournament, so he will not be on the show. But you will have Fids, you'll have Aldo. They will be talking a lot of Cubs baseball. Fids, I think he's going to be drinking a lot of Bushes because he wanted Michael Busch to make the All-Star team. So I'm sure he'll talk about that. In the meantime, scan that QR code. Get yourself a shirt from Homage. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week.